By the time the sun sank on that first day of fighting, July 1st, 1863, of the 500 men of the 24th Michigan who had entered the fray, less than 100 were still standing. 9 color bearers had been killed or were dying of their wounds. The flag had been shot to shreds, pierced by as many as 23 bullets. Its staff had been shattered in the hands of the color bearers, and yet they had preserved their flag and preserved their ground. They had not been defeated.
The Civil War had been going on for over a year when in August of 1862, a farmer from Nankin, Michigan, enlisted in the Union Army in Detroit. Abel Peck was in his early 40s when he left to join thousands of other men fighting the Civil War. He wrote to his young daughter, Alice, that he would be away for a while.
Alice, dear child, with a heart beating high with emotion, I attempt to advise you. It becomes my duty to say to you that I have enrolled myself as a volunteer for our country and its flag. Painful as it is, I feel it to be my duty. I am in Colonel Morrow's 24th Regiment, and Captain Crosby's company, best in the regiment. Surgeon said they were the best company of men that he ever inspected, and they are all American-born but one. Came to town yesterday and did expect to go home today, but shall not until tomorrow or next day. Please come to our house on Saturday if you can. Please excuse poor spelling and penmanship. From your father, with strong regard, Abel Peck, August 14, 1862.
Abel Peck was older than your average volunteer, and recall that during the Civil War from Michigan, almost all of the men who fought in the regiments from Michigan were volunteers. They didn't have to go. They answered Abraham Lincoln's call for volunteers with fervor. However, also recall that the fact that this is the 24th Michigan Regiment of Infantry means that it's the 24th group of 1,000 volunteers to be formed from Michigan. So this is not in the beginning of the war. This is in 1862, mid-1862 in August. And when the call goes out to organize a new infantry regiment of 1,000 volunteers, those volunteers knew very much what they were getting into. They no longer were naive. The war had been raging for over a year. They knew exactly what was before them. So when Abel Peck volunteered to enter the 24th Michigan, he pretty much knew what he had cut out for him. This was not a young man's rash and glorious move. Now, Abel Peck was unusual in another way. He was older, as I said, than most of the volunteers, and very likely must have been a widower. We surmise this because while he is in the 24th Michigan, he whiles away his empty hours, and there are many of them, by writing home. He writes home to his family members, his daughter Alice in particular, but never to a wife. The fact that he has left his daughter with his sister leads us to believe that he is a widower and has left his young family behind to volunteer. At the age of about 42, we believe, Abel Peck was much older than the other men of the regiment. Average age was 25. 1/3 of the regiment was under the age of 21. So, of course, being the older, more mature man that he was a natural to become a flag bearer, and he is the color sergeant that will carry the 24th's colors into battle. He accepts this duty with some pride.
Dear child, we left Detroit last Friday and arrived here last eve. This morning finds me quite well after a march from Washington about 10 miles. We are the advance guard, and they're fighting 16 miles from here at Bull's Run. We may have a chance soon. I see hundreds of tents from where I write. It is all hurry and commotion here, but I carry the colors. I have my own way rather more than the other boys. We have an order to pack for March, so goodbye. Abel Peck, September 2, 1862.
During the Civil War, probably the most important men of the regiment were those who were chosen to carry the regiment's battle flags. These were enormous flags. They were carried on 10-foot staffs. They were about 6 1/2 feet tall by regulation and 6 feet wide. They were made of silk. They would bear the name of the regiment, painted in gold by regulation on the 4th red stripe. They were fringed in gold. There was a star for the Union regiments for every state in the Union. And oftentimes they had mottos painted on them, mottos that reflected the importance of the flag to the regiment. Now, the men who volunteered to carry these flags into battle were to be morally upright. They were to be leaders, and they were to be tall, because their job was to carry those flags into battle and hold them up where every man of the regiment could see them. And why was that so important? Well, because they didn't essentially have any other way in the heat of battle of communicating with each other. The regiment was 1,000 strong. Although not that many would go into any particular battle, still 500 or 600 men might march into the battlefield. And they simply had no way of communicating with each other once they got there. The officers told the men to watch for their flags, to line up on the flag. And of course the color bearer, who would stand right in the middle of the regiment's line of action, their battle lines, would ask the men to line up on the flag. "Form on me," he would call up and down the line. It was, of course, vitally important that the men could see their flags. That's why they were so large, so brilliant, why they had the name of the regiment on them, and why they were held by the tallest men. So in all the noise and confusion and smoke on the field of battle, the one thing that could orient you, tell you whether or not to advance, because, of course, if the flags advance, so do you, tell you whether it was time to retreat. Follow your flag backwards in an orderly fashion if necessary. Don't just stay there and get captured or killed. If it was time to rally, if things were hopeless, then the order would come to the flag bearer to plant the staff in the ground, and that meant rally to the flag and make a last stand. Now, because of the importance, and this was a deadly importance, very quickly each regiment, each opposing regiment, the North and the South, discovered that the simplest way to demoralize a regiment, the simplest way to render it incapable of any kind of movement or communication, of course, was to eliminate the flag. If you couldn't shoot the flag to pieces, kill the flag bearer. And so as a consequence, it shouldn't surprise you to know that the highest carnage, the highest death rates of the war were suffered by the men who carried the flags into battle. And that's true both North and South.